I'm Sarah, 38 female. I live in a beautiful, quiet town surrounded by mountains, and I run a cutting-edge energy facility that feels more like a life's mission than a job. My life is orderly, fulfilling, and peaceful. But just over a year ago, it was the exact opposite, and the story of how I got here is one I feel compelled to share. It's a story about a choice, a betrayal, and the shocking revelation that the man I was going to marry loved my potential, income far more than he ever loved me. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. A year and a half ago, my world was a meticulously curated picture of urban success. I shared a sleek, minimalist apartment in the heart of the city with my fiancé, Julian. We had been together for 5 years, engaged for the last one, and on the surface, we were the couple everyone wanted to be. We hosted dinner parties where the wine was expensive and the conversation was witty. We took spontaneous weekend trips to chic little towns. We were both driven, successful, and I thought deeply in love. My career as a senior project manager in the renewable energy sector was demanding but rewarding. Julian was a senior marketing manager for a luxury automotive brand, a job that suited his personality perfectly. He was charming, ambitious, and deeply invested in aesthetics, in the brand of his car, the label on his suit, and the perceived prestige of our life together. I had always been the more grounded one, the scientist to his salesman. My passion wasn't in networking events or exclusive clubs, it was in the intricate dance of geology and engineering. I found beauty in seismic data and elegance in a well-designed turbine. For years, I had poured my energy into a specialized niche, geothermal energy. I believed it was the future, a clean, powerful, and largely untapped resource. My company, a major player in the energy sector, had been watching my work. I had spearheaded several successful pilot programs, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. I was good at my job, and I knew it, but I never imagined just how good they thought I was until the day I was called into the COO's office. The offer he laid on the table wasn't just a promotion, it was a legacy. The company was building its flagship geothermal research and power generation facility, a massive billion-dollar project poised to revolutionize the industry. And they wanted me to run it, not just manage it, but to be its first director. It was the kind of opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. I would have complete operational oversight, a massive budget, and the chance to build a team from the ground up. My mind swam with the possibilities, the challenges, the sheer scale of it all. I felt a surge of adrenaline and pride so potent it almost made me dizzy. Then came the catch. The facility wasn't being built in a bustling tech hub or a trendy metropolitan area. For geological reasons, proximity to volcanic bedrock and tectonic activity, it was located in a small, remote town called Pine Creek. I'd never heard of it. A quick search showed it was nestled in a mountain valley, hundreds of miles from the nearest major city. It had one main street, a handful of restaurants, and a population that wouldn't even fill a professional sports stadium. It was, by any urban definition, the middle of nowhere. I walked home that evening in a daze, clutching the offer letter in my portfolio like a winning lottery ticket. I was so excited, so overwhelmed, that I didn't fully consider Julian's perspective. I just assumed he would be as thrilled as I was. We were a team, a partnership. My success was his success, and vice versa, or so I thought. I found him in the living room, scrolling through his phone, while a financial news channel murmured in the background. The city lights twinkled through our floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a glamorous glow on our perfectly arranged lives. "Jules," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed excitement, "you are not going to believe the day I've had." He looked up, a placid smile on his face. "Good day. Did you finally close that deal with the regulators?" "Better," I said, perching on the edge of the sofa. "Much, much better." I laid it all out for him. The project, the director title, the incredible responsibility. I spoke about the groundbreaking technology we'd be implementing, the impact it would have on the entire energy grid. His smile slowly faded as I spoke, replaced by a look of profound confusion. Wait, back up, he said, holding up a hand. They want you to run the whole thing, the entire facility. Yes, can you believe it? That's huge, Sarah, congratulations. But his tone was flat, his eyes distant. Where is this place again? It's a small town, Pine Creek. It's up in the mountain. Apparently, it's the perfect spot geologically. Julian blinked slowly. Pine Creek, he repeated, as if the name itself tasted bad. He pulled out his phone and typed it into a map. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his brow furrowed. Sarah, this place is a ghost town. It's a 5-hour drive from here. There's nothing there. The nearest decent restaurant is probably an hour away. I laughed a little nervously. I'm sure it's not that bad. It's supposed to be beautiful. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is the job. He stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the vibrant city below. And what about my job? He asked, his back to me. What about my career? All my contacts are here. The entire luxury market is here. What am I supposed to do in Pine Creek? Sell tractors. The cold reality of the situation began to settle in my stomach. This wasn't going to be the celebratory evening I had imagined. Well, we'd figure it out, I said, my voice smaller now. You could work remotely maybe, or commute a couple of times a month. We have time to plan. He turned around, and his expression was no longer confused. It was incredulous, almost angry. Plan what, Sarah? Plan the systematic dismantling of the life we've spent 5 years building. My career isn't something I can just do from a laptop in a log cabin. My entire network, our friends, our life, it's all here. The conversation devolved from there. I tried to explain that this was a temporary move, maybe for 3 to 5 years, and that it would set us up for life. I tried to convey how much this meant to me personally and professionally, but he wasn't listening. He only heard what he would be losing. He saw his reflection not in my success, but in the supposed failure of relocating to a place without prestige. The argument stretched late into the night, a circular battle of my dream against his comfort. Finally, exhausted and emotionally raw, we stood in the silence of our living room, the chasm between us wider than it had ever been. Julian looked at me, his face set like stone. I'm not doing it, he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. I'm not throwing away my career and my life to go live in some backwater town. It's not happening. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. So what are you saying, Julian? He crossed his arms, a gesture of finality. I'm saying you have a choice to make. It's me and the life we have here or that job. He gestured dismissively, as if the opportunity of a lifetime were a piece of trash. My fiancé said, I won't relocate to that dull, small town for your job. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp, an ultimatum, a line drawn in the sand. He wasn't asking for a compromise, he was demanding a surrender. I looked at the man I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with, and in that moment, I saw him with a terrifying clarity. I saw a man whose love was conditional, whose support had a geographical limit. A profound, weary sadness washed over me. I didn't fight back. I didn't cry. I just nodded slowly. I get it, I responded, my voice barely a whisper. The silence that followed was the sound of our future breaking apart. The days following Julian's ultimatum were thick with a suffocating silence. We moved around the apartment like polite strangers, the unspoken tension, a third entity living in our shared space. He seemed to be operating under the assumption that I would eventually come to my senses, that I would see the obvious logic of his position and gracefully decline the offer. He'd occasionally make comments about future plans, a friend's wedding in 6 months, a vacation we discussed for the following year, as if dropping anchors to keep me tethered to our life in the city. Each comment felt like a subtle turn of a screw, tightening the pressure, reminding me of all I was supposedly expected to give up. For my part, I was in a state of quiet shock. His refusal hadn't just been about a town, it was a fundamental rejection of my ambition. He saw my dream not as a shared victory, but as a personal inconvenience. The man who had toasted my every small promotion at work, who had bragged to our friends about my intelligence, was now treating my greatest professional achievement as a foolish whim. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any argument we'd ever had. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't Julian, someone who saw me as Sarah, not just as one half of a power couple. I called Maya. She had been my best friend since college, a sharp-witted high school history teacher who had an uncanny ability to slice through nonsense. We met at a small, unassuming coffee shop far from the trendy places Julian and I frequented. I laid out the entire situation for her, the incredible job, the remote location, and Julian's stark ultimatum. She listened patiently, her expression growing more and more serious as I spoke. When I finished, she stirred her latte for a long moment before speaking. "Aching, let me get this straight," she said, her voice calm and even. The love of your life was presented with two options. Option A, his fiancé achieves her ultimate career goal, becomes a leader in her field, and together they build an exciting new life for a few years. Option B, she turns it all down so he doesn't have to change his favorite brunch spot. Hearing it framed so bluntly made the absurdity of it all hit me with full force. A weak, bitter laugh escaped my lips. That's about the size of it. And he's genuinely trying to convince you that option B is the only reasonable choice. I nodded, tracing a pattern on the table with my finger. He says we've built a life here, that I'm being selfish for even considering throwing it all away. Maya leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. "Sarah, he's not afraid of you throwing your life away. He's afraid of you building a new one that isn't centered around him and his world. Did he ever, even once, ask you what this opportunity means to you? Did he ask about the project, about your vision for it? Or did he immediately start listing all the ways it would inconvenience him?" Her questions were like a series of precise, painful incisions, cutting away the layers of denial I hadn't even realized I was clinging to. He hadn't asked. Not once. His entire argument had been a monologue of personal sacrifice. He had never considered that I might be sacrificing something, too, namely my own self-worth, if I were to turn down this opportunity for him. "He thinks I'll be bored and lonely," I murmured. "He's not worried you'll be lonely," Maya corrected gently. "He's worried you won't be. He's worried you'll build a life, find friends, and be perfectly happy without the city, and therefore, without the version of him that needs the city to feel important." We sat in silence for a while, the hum of the coffee shop a backdrop to the crumbling of my 5-year relationship in my mind. Maya had given voice to the ugly truth I had been trying to ignore. Julian's love was conditional. It was contingent on a lifestyle, on a version of me that fit neatly into his meticulously curated world. This new Sarah, this director of a major facility in a small town, was not part of his brand. I went home that night with a sense of cold, hard clarity. The choice wasn't between Julian and a job. It was between a future where my dreams were secondary and a future where I was the main character in my own story. It wasn't really a choice at all. I found Julian in his home office, finalizing a presentation. He looked up as I entered, a brief, expectant smile on his face, as if he assumed my period of pouting was over. I didn't waste time with small talk. I stood in the doorway and said, "I'm taking the job, Julian." His smile vanished. He leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. "You're kidding, right? After everything we talked about, you're still considering this." "I'm not considering it. I've accepted the offer. I call them this afternoon. I start in 6 weeks. He stared at me, his jaw tight. For a second, I saw a flash of genuine panic in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by arrogance. "Fine," he scoffed. "Go play pioneer woman in the woods. You'll be begging to come back in 2 months. The city, this life, it's in your blood. You'll hate it there." "Maybe," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "But it's a chance I have to take, and I have to take it alone." The finality in my tone finally seemed to register. This wasn't a negotiation tactic. This was the end. "So that's it," he said, his voice laced with disbelief and wounded pride. "You're throwing away 5 years for a promotion." "No, Julian," I said, looking him straight in the eye. You're asking me to throw away my entire future for your comfort. I'm just not willing to do that anymore. The weeks that followed were a blur of logistics and quiet heartbreak. The process of separating our lives was clinical and brutal. We divided furniture, untangled joint accounts, and spoke only when necessary. The shared dreams we had built dissolved into a series of transactions. Julian was cold and distant, treating me with the dismissive contempt of a business deal gone wrong. He made it clear to our mutual friends that I was the one leaving, that I was the one who had made the selfish, inexplicable choice. Packing up my belongings from the apartment was the hardest part. Each object, a photograph, a book we'd read together, a souvenir from a trip, was a ghost of the future I had once believed in. But with each box I sealed, I felt a growing sense of resolve. I was not just packing up my past, I was packing for my future. The day I left, Julian was out. He had made sure to be gone, a final, petty act of emotional cowardice. I left my key and the engagement ring on the polished kitchen counter, the diamond catching the morning light. It looked cold and foreign, a relic from another life. As I drove of the city, the familiar skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror, I didn't feel the regret Julian had predicted. I didn't feel like I was running from something. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was driving toward myself. Arriving in Pine Creek was like stepping into a different world. The air was crisp and clean, tinged with the scent of pine and damp earth. The relentless symphony of city traffic was replaced by the rustle of wind in the trees and the distant cry of a hawk. Julian's dull small town was, in reality, breathtakingly beautiful, nestled in a valley carved by ancient glaciers and surrounded by majestic, forest-clad mountains. It was quiet, yes, but it was a peaceful quiet, a silence that felt restorative rather than empty. The first few months were a whirlwind of activity. The facility was still in its final stages of construction, and I threw myself into the work with a singular focus I hadn't realized I was missing. I was on site from dawn until dusk, hiring my team, overseeing the final installations, and mapping out the operational strategy. The work was all-consuming, a complex and exhilarating puzzle that demanded every ounce of my expertise and creativity. It was the most challenging and the most rewarding experience of my professional life. I had been worried about loneliness, about Maya's prediction that Julian's real fear was that I wouldn't be lonely. But the community I found in Pine Creek was warmer and more welcoming than any I had known in the city. People here were connected by a shared sense of place, not by their job titles or social standing. My team at the facility was a brilliant collection of engineers, geologists, and technicians who had come from all over the world, drawn by the project's ambition. Among them was Ben, the lead geologist. He was a quiet, thoughtful man in his early 40s with a dry sense of humor and an encyclopedic knowledge of the earth beneath our feet. He was brilliant without being arrogant, and he treated me as a director, but also as a peer. There was an immediate professional respect between us that was refreshingly straightforward. Unlike Julian, he didn't care about appearances. He cared about data, about integrity, and about the work. We spent long hours debating seismic charts and drilling strategies, and in our conversations, I found a kind of intellectual companionship I hadn't known with Julian. My life settled into a new rhythm. Work was intense, but my time off was my own. I started hiking on the weekends, exploring the vast network of trails that spiderwebbed through the mountains. I discovered the simple pleasure of a morning coffee on my small porch, watching the fog burn off the valley floor. I was building a life, piece by piece, that was entirely mine. I rarely thought of Julian, and when I did, it was with a distant, clinical detachment, like remembering a character from a book I'd once read. 6 months after my move, our facility went fully operational. It was a massive success, exceeding all our initial performance projections. We were generating clean, reliable energy and making headlines within the industry. I was proud, exhausted, and deeply content. Life was good. Then, the past came roaring back in the most unexpected way. Our company's success, and specifically the innovative model of the Pine Creek facility, caught the attention of a major national business magazine, think Forbes or Fortune. They decided to do a feature story on the renewable energy boom, and our project was the centerpiece. A journalist and a photographer spent 2 days at the facility, interviewing me, Ben, and other key team members. I spoke passionately about the technology and the incredible team I had built. I was proud of what we had accomplished and happy to share our story. The article was published a few weeks later. It was a flattering, in-depth piece that painted me as a visionary leader in a male-dominated field. They called the Pine Creek project a game changer. I felt a swell of pride reading it. Then I got to a sidebar in the article titled "The New Energy Elite: Compensation in a High-Stakes Sector." It discussed the aggressive compensation packages companies were using to lure top talent to remote but critical locations. And there it was, in black and white, a single sentence that would detonate my peaceful new life. Directors of such flagship projects, like Sarah of the Pine Creek facility, can command salaries upwards of $600,000 a year, a figure that reflects the immense responsibility and specialized expertise required. I stared at the number. I knew my salary, of course, but seeing it printed in a national publication felt strangely exposing. I hadn't told anyone the specifics of my compensation, not even Maya. It was private, and I certainly had never told Julian. When he had delivered his ultimatum, the financial details of the offer hadn't even been finalized. I had negotiated the final package after I had already decided to leave him. He had made his choice based on the assumption that I was moving for a moderately better salary to a place he deemed worthless. He had no idea of the true scale of it. I didn't think much of it beyond the initial shock. Who from my old life would even be reading this niche business magazine? I found out that evening. I was winding down after a long day, watching the sunset paint the mountains in hues of orange and purple when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Maya. "Uh-oh, did you see the new issue of Forbes Next?" Before I could reply, a second message came through. It was a screenshot from a social media page belonging to a mutual acquaintance from the city, a woman who worked in finance. She had shared the article with the caption, "Incredible work being done by my friend Sarah, such an inspiration, and wow, that salary, they are paying you what you're worth. At Julian, you must be so proud." My blood ran cold. She had tagged Julian. She had no idea about our breakup, as we had kept it quiet outside our immediate circle. She thought she was paying us both a compliment, but what she had actually done was hand-deliver a piece of information that changed everything. She had just told my materialistic, prestige-obsessed ex-fiancé that the dull job he had mocked, the job he had forced me to choose over him, came with a $600,000 a year paycheck. I stared at the screenshot, my heart sinking. I knew Julian. I knew how his mind worked. This wasn't just news to him, it was a personal affront. It meant that I hadn't just left him, I had leveled up in a way he could understand and covet. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't Maya this time. It was an unknown number, but the area code was from the city. A moment later, a text message notification appeared on my screen. The preview was short, just 3 words. "Sarah, we need to talk." I didn't need to see the rest. I knew exactly who it was from. The quiet, peaceful world I had so carefully constructed had just been breached. The first message was just the opening salvo in what would become a relentless, calculated campaign. For a few days, I tried to ignore it. I deleted the text without opening it and blocked the number. I told myself it was a desperate, one-time attempt at contact, a fleeting reaction to a bruised ego. But I had underestimated Julian's tenacity, especially when money was involved. The man who couldn't be bothered to support my dream was now going to invest an astonishing amount of effort into getting back into my life, now that he knew the dream came with a hefty price tag. A few days later, an email landed in my personal inbox. The subject line was simple, "Thinking of you." My finger hovered over the delete button, but a morbid curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. The email was a masterpiece of faux sincerity. He started by saying how incredibly proud he was of my success, how the article had blown him away. He wrote, "Reading about what you've built, I realized what a fool I was. I was so caught up in my own world, my own fears, that I couldn't see the bigger picture. I should have been your biggest supporter." He didn't mention the salary directly, of course. He was too clever for that. Instead, he framed his regret in purely emotional terms. He reminisced about our past, mentioning specific memories. A trip to Italy, the first time we cooked dinner together, the day we brought home our ficus tree. Each memory was a carefully chosen hook, designed to reel me back into a shared history that he had so callously discarded. He ended the email with, "I know I have no right to ask, but I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I know now that my life isn't complete without you." It was so transparent it was almost insulting. I immediately forwarded it to Maya with the caption, "You are not going to believe this." Her response was instantaneous. "Wow, he's not even subtle. I've been doing a lot of thinking since I saw your W2 preview in a magazine. What a snake. Delete and block." I followed her advice, blocking his email address. But Julian was like a hydra. For every head I cut off, two more seemed to grow in its place. He started using social media. He sent a friend request from a new profile. He slid into my direct messages with more nostalgic photos and declarations of his undying love. "Remember this sunset? Not as beautiful as the ones you probably see every day, but it was special because I was with you." It was nauseating. When I blocked him on all platforms, he changed tactics. He started going through other people. Messages from old mutual friends began trickling in. "Hey Sarah, long time no talk. Julian was just telling me how much he misses you. He seems really broken up about everything." They were his unwitting messengers, spreading his narrative that he was a heartbroken man consumed by regret. He was painting himself as the victim, the fool, who had let the love of his life get away, and was now desperately trying to atone for his mistake. The final straw was the package that arrived at my office. I was in a meeting with my engineering team when my assistant buzzed me. "Sarah, there's a floral delivery for you at the front desk. It's quite large." Down in the lobby was a ridiculously ostentatious bouquet of 24 long-stemmed red roses. Tucked inside was a card, written in Julian's familiar, elegant script. "I know flowers can't fix what I broke, but I hope they can be a start. I was wrong about everything. I would move to Pine Creek tomorrow if you'd have me. I love you. Always have, always will. J." Standing there in the lobby of the facility I had built, surrounded by my respected colleagues, staring at this monument to his insincerity, I wasn't hurt or sad. I was furious. This wasn't a private apology, it was a public performance. He had sent them to my place of work, a space that was sacred to me, a space I had created to be free of him and the life we'd shared. It was an invasion. It was a power play, an attempt to insert himself back into my narrative in a way I couldn't ignore. That evening, I vented to Maya on a video call. "He's not just trying to get back with me," I fumed, pacing my small living room. "He's trying to rewrite history. He wants to believe that this is some grand romantic gesture, that he's the hero fighting to win back his love. He's completely ignoring the fact that he gave me an ultimatum and I called his bluff." "Of course he is," Maya said, sipping her tea calmly. "Because in his mind, he made a bad business decision. He backed the wrong horse. He thought your career was a quaint little hobby, and he chose the safe bet, his comfortable city life. Now he's seen the quarterly report and realized your hobby is outturning his entire portfolio. This isn't about love, Sarah. It's about buyer's remorse." She was right. The man I once loved had been replaced by a shameless opportunist. Every message, every memory he dredged up was tainted by the knowledge of what had prompted it. It wasn't my absence that had sparked his regret, it was the article. It was the number. His calculated campaign wasn't born from a change of heart, but from a change in my financial status. My anger began to cool, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I had spent 6 months building a new life, a peaceful life. I had earned it. I would not let the ghost of my past, motivated by greed, haunt the foundations of my future. Julian wanted to get my attention, fine, but he wasn't going to get the reaction he wanted. He was going to get nothing. The wall he was trying to breach was about to get a whole lot higher. Julian's relentless campaign had the opposite effect of what he intended. Instead of making me miss him or our old life, it solidified my gratitude for my new one. Every manipulative message was a stark reminder of the bullet I had dodged. His desperate attempts to reconnect only highlighted how peaceful my life had become without him in it. I realized his campaign wasn't something I needed to fight. It was something I needed to make irrelevant. My best defense wasn't a good offense. It was a happy, thriving life that he simply couldn't touch. So I focused on building. I had been renting a small house since I arrived, but now I decided to put down permanent roots. I spent my weekends with a local real estate agent, exploring properties in and around Pine Creek. I fell in love with a charming house on the edge of town, a sturdy, cedar-shingled home with a large stone fireplace and wide windows that looked out onto the sprawling valley. It had a wraparound porch and a big, untamed garden that was crying out for attention. It was the antithesis of the cold, minimalist apartment I had shared with Julian. It felt like a home. Putting in the offer and getting the keys was a profoundly empowering act. It was a physical declaration of my intention to stay, to build a life here on my own terms. My next step was to fill the home with life. On a whim one Saturday, I visited the local animal shelter. I walked past cages of hopeful, barking dogs until my eyes landed on a quiet, scruffy terrier mix huddled in the back of his kennel. He had one floppy ear and wise, soulful eyes. The shelter staff said his name was Buster and that he'd been found wandering near the highway. I took him for a walk, and within minutes, he was leaning against my leg, nudging my hand with his head. I adopted him on the spot. Buster quickly became my shadow, my hiking companion, and my co-pilot on drives. His quiet, constant companionship filled the house with a warmth and unconditional affection that I hadn't realized I was craving. My friendships in Pine Creek deepened as well. My professional relationship with Ben blossomed into a genuine friendship. We discovered a shared love for old sci-fi movies and terrible puns. We'd grab dinner at the local diner after a low-NG week, talking about everything and nothing. One weekend, he took me on one of his favorite hikes, a challenging trail that led to a hidden alpine lake. As we sat by the water's edge, sharing a thermos of coffee, I realized how easy it was to be with him. There were no pretenses, no expectations. He respected my mind, valued my opinion, and seemed genuinely happy for my success. It wasn't a romance, not yet, but it was a connection built on a foundation of mutual respect, a foundation that had been completely absent with Julian. With my personal life flourishing, I turned my attention to reinforcing my professional and digital boundaries. I made it a point to speak with the few mutual friends Julian had contacted. I was calm and direct. "I understand Julian has been in touch with you," I'd say. "I just want to be clear that our relationship is over, and it has been for a long time. I've moved on, and I would appreciate it if you would respect my privacy. I wish him the best, but I have no desire for any further contact." Most were understanding and apologetic, realizing they had been used as pawns in his game. Digitally, I did a complete audit. I tightened my privacy settings on every platform. I created new filters for my email, sending anything from an unknown or suspicious address directly to a junk folder I would never check. I instructed my assistant at work to screen all deliveries and to politely decline anything personal sent to the office. The facility was my sanctuary, and I was determined to keep it that way. This wasn't a plan for revenge, it was a plan for peace. I was building an unbreachable wall, not of anger, but of indifference. My life was a fortress, and Julian simply didn't have the clearance to enter. There was one last, desperate attempt on his part. He somehow got the number for the facility's main line and tried to leave a message for me. The receptionist, a no-nonsense woman named Carol who had been in Pine Creek her whole life, handled it perfectly. As she later relayed to me, he had tried to pass himself off as a concerned family member. Carol, who knew my history and had seen the ridiculous roses, was not fooled. She had politely but firmly informed him that I was unavailable and that personal calls were not put through to the director's office. He had apparently become belligerent, demanding to be connected, at which point she had told him, "Sir, I'm not going to do that. Have the day you deserve," and hung up. Hearing that story, I didn't feel a flicker of fear or anger. I felt a profound sense of being protected, not just by my own actions, but by the community I had become a part of. Julian was an outsider here. His city-slicker charm and manipulative tactics had no power in a place where people valued authenticity and integrity. He was shouting at a wall that was 100 miles thick and getting thicker every day. He couldn't understand that I hadn't just moved towns. I had moved on to an entirely different plane of existence, one where his currency, prestige, money, and manipulation was worthless. For several weeks, there was silence. The emails stopped, the messages from mutual friends ceased, and no more unwanted deliveries arrived at my office. I began to hope that Julian had finally exhausted his options, that he had accepted defeat and moved on. The peace was wonderful. My life in Pine Creek settled into a comfortable, happy routine. The project was thriving, my new house was starting to feel like a real home, and my friendship with Ben was slowly, naturally, beginning to evolve into something more. But Julian had one last card to play. He found a final, overlooked crack in my digital wall, my LinkedIn profile. It was an account I rarely used, a professional relic I hadn't thought to lock down. An email notification popped up on my phone one evening as I was cooking dinner, Buster dozing at my feet. "You have a new message on LinkedIn from Julian Vance." My first instinct was to delete it, to just block him and be done with it. But then I hesitated. I knew this was his last-ditch effort. This was his Hail Mary pass. And a part of me, the part that needed absolute and total closure, felt compelled to read it. I wanted to see the full extent of his delusion laid bare. I dried my hands, took a deep breath, and opened the message. It was, as I had expected, his magnum opus of manipulation. It was long, rambling, and filled with arias of manufactured regret. "Sarah," it began, "I know you've been ignoring me and I understand why. I deserve it. But I can't live with myself if I don't make one last attempt to tell you what's in my heart. These past months without you have been the darkest of my life. I walk through our old apartment and all I see are ghosts of the happiness I threw away. I was a coward, Sarah. I was terrified. I saw your success, and instead of celebrating it, I saw it as a threat to the comfortable life I knew. I let my ego and my fear make the sent decision of my life." He went on, painting a vivid picture of his supposed misery. He claimed he had been in therapy, that he had done the work to understand his own deep-seated insecurities. He talked about our future, the one he had single-handedly destroyed, with a theatrical, heartbreaking nostalgia. Then came the pivot. When I saw that article, my first thought wasn't about the money, I swear to you. My first thought was, look at her. She's changing the world and I'm not there to see it. The money doesn't matter to me, Sarah. What matters is you. But yes, I admit, seeing your success in such stark terms made me realize what you were truly building. That kind of success would give us the freedom to do anything, to build any life we wanted, whether in Pine Creek or anywhere else. It could have been our foundation. It still could be. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. He was trying to co-opt my success, to reframe my achievement as something that was only truly valuable if it included him. He ended with a final, desperate plea. "I love you. I never stopped. Please, just give me one more chance to prove it. Let me come to Pine Creek. Let me show you the man I've become. Let me be the partner you always deserved." I read the message twice, a cold, clinical calm settling over me. There was no anger left, no sadness. There was only a profound sense of pity for this hollow man. I realized in that moment that I needed to respond, not for him. He was beyond reason. I needed to do it for me. I needed to write the final sentence of this chapter of my life so that I could close the book for good. I sat down at my laptop and began to type. I didn't write with anger or passion. I wrote with the detached precision of an engineer diagnosing a critical system failure. Julian, I started. Thank you for your message. It has provided me with a valuable sense of closure. I want to be unequivocally clear so that there is no room for misinterpretation. Our relationship is over. It has been over since the day you gave me an ultimatum between my life's work and your comfort. Let's not pretend this sudden wave of regret is about anything other than the salary you read about in a magazine. For 5 years, you saw my career as a respectable, but secondary, part of our life. The moment it required you to make a minor sacrifice, you dismissed it. My dream was an inconvenience. My ambition was a problem to be managed. You had no interest in my dull life in this dull town until you saw its price tag. The man you claim to have become doesn't exist. You are the same person you were a year ago, someone who measures worth in dollars and prestige. You didn't fall in love with me again, you fell in love with my tax bracket. The life you want is not with me, but with the opportunities my income could provide you. You didn't love me then, and you don't love me now. You loved the idea of me as an accessory to your lifestyle, and you resent that I have built a successful life that has absolutely nothing to do with you. I have built that life here, in Pine Creek. It is a life filled with purpose, integrity, genuine friendship, and peace. It is everything I ever wanted, and I built it myself for myself. You are not, and will never be, a part of it. This is the last time you will ever hear from me. Do not contact me again through any medium. Any further attempts will be viewed as harassment. Goodbye, Julian. I read it over once, took a deep breath, and hit send. Then, without a moment's hesitation, I blocked his profile on LinkedIn and closed my laptop. A huge, shuddering wave of relief washed over me. It was done. The final tether was cut. The last ghost had been exorcised. I walked over to the window and looked out at the mountains, their dark silhouettes outlined against a star-filled sky. The air was clean, the silence was deep, and for the first time, I felt completely and utterly free. A year has passed since I sent that final message. 12 months of blessed, uninterrupted silence. Julian never tried to contact me again. Whether my words finally pierced his thick skull or he simply realized the well was dry, I don't know. And truthfully, I don't care. His absence is no longer a void where a relationship used to be. It's just a clean, quiet space. He has become completely irrelevant, a footnote in a story that has moved on to much more interesting chapters. My life in Pine Creek is richer and more fulfilling than I could have ever imagined. My house is no longer just a structure. It's a home filled with the smell of baking bread on weekends, the sound of Buster's paws clicking on the hardwood floors, and the warmth of a crackling fire in the hearth. My garden, once a chaotic mess of weeds, is now a thriving patchwork of vegetables and wildflowers. I've learned the names of the constellations in the clear night sky and the subtle shifts in the landscape that mark the changing of the seasons. At work, the Fiancé. Liddy continues to be a resounding success. We've broken records for energy output and efficiency, and our research division is making discoveries that will shape the future of the industry. I lead a team of brilliant, dedicated people who respect me not for my title or my salary, but for my vision and my leadership. Walking through the control room, seeing the hum of clean energy being generated, I feel a sense of purpose that is more satisfying than any city accolade could ever be. I didn't just take a job, I built a legacy. My friendship with Ben has deepened into the kind of partnership I once thought was only a fantasy. It grew slowly, organically, built on a bedrock of shared values and mutual admiration. Our first official date was a clumsy, wonderful dinner at my house where I almost burned the lasagna and he spilled wine on his shirt. We laughed more than we talked. He is a kind, steady presence in my life. He celebrates my strengths, supports my ambitions, and isn't afraid of my success. He loves me for who I am, not for what I can provide. With him, I feel seen in a way Julian, with his focus on the superficial, could never comprehend. We are building a future together, not based on a curated image, but on genuine connection. Sometimes, when I'm out hiking with Ben and Buster on a crisp autumn morning, the sun filtering through the golden leaves of the aspen trees, I think about the choice I made. I think about the woman I was, the one who almost sacrificed her dreams for a man who saw them as an inconvenience. It feels like a lifetime ago. The ultimatum Julian gave me, intended to be a cage, turned out to be the key that set me free. He thought he was presenting me with an impossible choice, but in reality, he was giving me a gift. The gift of seeing him for who he truly was. His last, desperate attempt to win me back wasn't about love or redemption. It was the frantic gamble of a man who realized he had folded on a royal flush. He didn't want me, he wanted a stake in my winnings. The ultimate karma wasn't some grand, dramatic revenge plot. It was simpler and far more profound. It was the quiet, undeniable truth that I was thriving, not just in spite of his absence, but because of it. My happiness is the ultimate rebuttal to his cynical, materialistic worldview. My peace is the silence of a door he can never again open. Every morning, I wake up to the sunrise cresting over the mountains, its golden light spilling into the valley. I feel a deep, abiding sense of gratitude for this dull, wonderful small town and the beautiful, authentic life I have built here. The silence from my past is the sweetest sound I've ever known. It is the sound of victory.